Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today we're going over what is, in my opinion, the top 5 most hated ships in-game. So, what does this mean? Well, it's pretty self-explanatory. These are 5 of the most hated ships from the community's point of view, from all the comments that I see about them in my comment section, on the forums, Reddit, and elsewhere in the community. Also from just playing this game for the past 5, 6, 7 years now at this point. These are the ships that I, myself, have some pretty strong feelings toward as well. Again, this is all my opinion. It's just a fun list for today's video, so let's go ahead and dive right on in. Starting at number 5, which is the French super ship, the Condé. Now, the Condé is a super ship which inherently, at Wargaming's own admission, are designed to be pretty much absolutely broken ships that you are willing to essentially lose credits playing in order to get that advantage in game. Now, the Condé is the super ship that I chose for this spot on the list because you could put the Eagle here. The Eagle is very arguably one of the most broken ships in game at the moment, but a lot of the hate that I have toward the Condé and a lot of the more dedicated players have toward the Condé came from last season of Seabees when this ship was everywhere in clan battles. I absolutely despise this ship because of that season of clan battles. Running against 2 Condé and 2 Napoli for the entirety of a Seabees season makes you feel certain ways against those ships. But yes, this ship is extremely infuriating to play against in random battles, let alone in a competitive setting. She has 12 of Henri's guns, which are already excellent guns. Used to be the largest guns of the game, those old French 240mm guns, but now you have 12 of them. And my main gripe about the Condé, because in most cases she's just a bigger Henri IV in many ways. But the main feature of the super ships, besides of course their inherent base ability to just be better than the tier 10s, is their alternative firing modes. This varies from ship to ship, but on the cruisers and destroyers generally consist of a burst fire mode that's very similar to the autoloader mechanic in World of Tanks, where you can switch this firing mode and get 2 to 3 quick rapid bursts in very quick succession after firing. Now, the downside for this on every ship is that you have a very long reload period. In the Condé's case, I think it's 45-50 seconds. However, for some reason, when designing the Condé, Wargaming thought it was wise to basically give the Condé a consumable that you press it and there's no consequences to your actions. And that is the reload booster, because the French cruisers get the reload boosters, so I guess using their logic, the Condé, as the pinnacle of the French cruiser tech line now, should also get that. So that means that you get to cut that reload time down in half, which means that you can again use your alternative burst fire mode quite quick. Needless to say, the ability to throw 24 240mm shells downrange that are either French AP or French HE is kinda busted. So either in an HE situation, you could be in a situation where they just reload bursted you, and now you have 3 fires on your battleship. You damage con that, then guess what? They pop their reload booster, they have their alternative fire mode ready to go, and then boom, again they have another 3 to 4 fires set on your ship within 30 seconds, which is kind of insane. And then you throw the AP in that too. This ship can easily delete pretty much every tier 10 cruiser at range with the AP that this thing has. And keep in mind too, with the alternative fire mode going, the salvos are actually more accurate, and it gives the HE better pin as well, because that's how that works apparently. So yeah, that aspect right there is what makes Condé the most infuriating super ship in my opinion, and is why it's on this list instead of the Eagle. Again, there's a very strong case you could put the Eagle here as well, but I think after forcing the more dedicated players to play against this ship for an entire clan battle season, that's why the Condé deserves this spot on the list. Alright, going on down to number 4, we have everyone's favorite tier 10 American aircraft carrier, the FDR. Now, the FDR is a steel ship, which means that players that want to get an FDR have to play a lot of ranked or clan battles. And inherently, this means that the more skilled players are the ones that get these still ships. And these still ships, in most cases, are pretty darn good ships. And then they're being mostly bought by the players that, again, are playing competitive, that are playing ranked, that are the better players in the game. So, needless to say, the players that pick up FDR are some of the better CV players in the game, and then you give them a CV with FDR's capabilities. So what is FDR's shtick? Well, she has absolutely massive squadrons. Her planes have a massive amount of ordnance on them, and their HP pool is also massive as well. However, they are ungodly slow. So the idea is that you have slow, heavy planes that can survive quite a bit of AA, and you have many, many attacks in each squadron. For the most part, and I'm pretty sure it's for all the squadrons, there's only 2 planes that actually attack per squadron, but they just have a stupid amount of ordnance for each plane. For example, the torpedo planes drop 8 torpedoes with only 2 planes, and look at the size of the squadrons on screen. Couple this with the fact that, again, the planes have... the whole squadron, in many a case, has more HP than a lot of tier 10 cruisers, and you gotta somehow manage to, of course, whittle those down with your ship's AA. The only guaranteed way to stave off an FDR attack is if you're absolutely just clumped up together with 4 or 5 other ships. Then at that point, the consistent damage coupled with the flak damage will finally actually be able to do some damage against the FDR planes. The FDR planes don't really care about the consistent damage from the AA, it's more about the flak burst. So again, put this CV in the hands of a CV player that's good at dodging flak, and God, the sky's the limit with the amount of damage that you can do with these planes. Even with myself playing FDR, it's stupidly easy for a CV player like me, and I'm not a good CV player, especially on anything that isn't a Russian or a German CV. I can easily do 160, 170,000 damage, and that's actually pretty low damage for the FDR. Good CV players, again, are easily up in like the 200,000-300,000s with this CV. So of course, this is one of the most despised CVs on, well, not only in the game, but on this list, because yes, there is another one on this list as well, because of course, if we're talking about the most hated ships, you gotta have a couple of CVs on this list, because it's nigh impossible for 1 or 2 ships to stand up to an FDR. You have to be very good at dodging the ordnance, and it drops a lot of it, or again, you have to have lots of AA friends, or you have to be in an absolute AA barge, something like a AA built Puerto Rico, an AA built Minotaur, an AA built Worcester, or an AA built one of the pan Euro DDs to really stand up to this thing. So yes, this is an extremely frustrating ship to fight against. Well, I mean, let's be real, when you're fighting against the planes, not the ship most of the time, and they seem to have died off in random battles. They did nerf the FDR a little bit back in the day. I believe they removed one set of planes from the torpedo squadron, and then one set of planes from the dive bomber squadrons, but I think that's about it. But yes, this is still a very much despised CV, and many a player will either request you shoot at it or have several things to say about it in chat when you do see one on the other team. But again, thankfully they seem to have died off now. I think the Russian ones have kind of taken over, but that's for a couple more spots down. Speaking of Russian, on the way to number 3, we have the tier 10 Soviet light cruiser, the Smolensk. Oh man, the Smolensk. God, I hated this ship back in the day. So this is actually a ship that, in my opinion, isn't really that bad anymore, but her reputation does precede her by quite a lot. For a very long time, Smolensk was the bane of every battleship and large cruiser player's existence. 16 guns on the Smolensk. With, well, today it's like a 4.5 second reload with the range module, but you could get it down to like 3-ish seconds back in the day with the old commander skills. Ah, man, this ship and I have quite the history. So yes, this ship used to be able to get out to 19 kilometers. A light cruiser with a 19-kilometer maximum range, with Soviet shells, mind you. So good air drag coefficients, good velocities, and good arcs, which meant that she was actually usable at 19 kilometers, because you can get some other light cruisers out to quite the far, in the distance category, like the American cruisers, but you're not going to hit anything at that range, like spotter range build Wooster back in the day. That the shells had a 30-second flight time to get to the target. Realistically, unless someone's stuck on an island or a battleship's completely not paying attention, that's the only two cases you're going to actually hit someone at that range. But again, with the Soviet shell characteristics, the small lens used to be able to just farm whatever it wanted down for maximum range with pretty much impunity. And God, I hated it. I hated it so bad. Another thing too is that since it's a light cruiser and because of the way the armor mechanics work in this game, many a time when you could finally shoot the thing in your battleship, you just get overpens and do like maybe 4 or 5k to it, while it just got done farming you down for like 30,000 damage and it's still going. Not to mention it has smokescreen, hydro, 8-kilometer torpedoes, which if you look at the rest of the Soviet light cruisers, in most cases, until you get to like the higher tiers, the torpedoes are strictly self-defense torpedoes, so like 4-kilometer torps. But this thing, of course, gets 8-kilometer torps that are quite good and pack one hell of a punch, so that when you do decide to, okay, screw it, I'm going to go ahead and push this thing, you got to deal with that too. And then you're still going to probably overpin the thing once you finally see it. So yeah, she's been nerfed quite hard. Her maximum range now is 16 kilometers, and you have to take the range mod to get to that, which cuts back on the DPM. So she's still annoying if you're on the receiving end of her today, but they've done a pretty good job balancing the ship and helping quash what once made the ship absolutely busted. Again, it's still as annoying as hell to deal with, especially if you get a good small links player that gets into a good defensible position and knows how to use island cover and how to disengage and such, but they won't be burning you down from outside your main battery gun range like you'd have to deal with in a lot of tier 8 battleships. Because a lot of tier 8 battleships, their range is about 18.5, 18.1, so you in a battleship with massive 16-inch guns are being outranged by this thing with its tiny, what are they, like 125, something like that, or 120s. Yeah. It was very infuriating back in the day. So, fond memories of that boat. Okay, going down to number 2, we have the Tier 10 Soviet CV, the Nakhimov. I don't think this thing needs any introduction. This and the FDR are the two CVs right now that, in my opinion, are still outright busted. The FDR, again, not so much so, because again they've kind of dined off. I haven't really seen one in battle in a while, but the Nakhimov is still very present and is still very, very, very good at making the enemy team suffer. So the Nakhimov, if you don't know what this thing is, this is the pinnacle of the Soviet carrier tech tree. And the Soviet carriers' things is that the squadrons don't attack in individual flights, rather they attack all at once, which on the lower tier ones and the mid tier and in the Pope beta to an extent, it's an interesting mechanic and a good effort from wargaming, in my opinion, to try and deal with the disconnect between your ship's AA actually shooting down planes and you having the ability to, actually do something about the attack coming in at you. Because the way it works with every other CV is that if there's 10 planes in the squadron and only 2 planes in the attack wave, in order to effectively take munition away from being thrown at your ship, you have to shoot down, of course, 9 planes, because those 2 planes that are attacking, they get shot down. Those spots get filled in via planes from the rest of the squadron. But with the Soviet CVs, they all attack at once, and they have low HP for their tier. The Nakhimov's planes have less HP than the tier 6 CVs do. But there's a bunch of planes in the squadron. They are pretty fast. They're surprisingly maneuverable too. That's something that still surprises me today, is how a lot of these planes, which are in many cases medium bombers, are pretty darn maneuverable. And plus, their ordnance is normally dropped from like the outskirts of your AA's range. So that's when your AA is doing the least amount of damage. You only have to worry about the flak burst. And when you get in close, that's when you start to deal with that close to mid-range AA, where you get some good, consistent DPM coming from your AA guns. The Soviet CVs don't really have to worry about that because, again, you're dropping these ordnance from like 2 or 3 kilometers away. In many cases, in like the Italian battleships, you don't even really care about their AA because you're in it for like 2 seconds. So, yeah. And the Nakhimov just takes it to the next level with the squadron sizes, the amount of ordnance that this thing drops. They did nerf this plane too, this CV2. They did remove, I think, one from the torpedo bomber squadron and one plane from the skip bomber squadron. So that kind of helped out. But I mean, again, me playing this ship, easy 180, 190, 200,000 damage. And again, I'm a terrible CV player, but this ship's just that busted. And again, it gets skip bombers, and the skip bombers are crazy. If you get all of your planes off, you're throwing 7 skip bombs at the enemy ship. Which, if those all connect, you're easily chunking them for like 15 to 18k a run, and probably starting 3 or 4 fires. The rocket planes are also very good too. The rockets have very similar performance to the Tiny Tim rockets, so they pin a lot. And in this match, the Kearsarge, which of course has a giant flight deck on it, I chunked that thing's tumor for 20k with the rockets and set 2 fires. Now, granted, that is the Kearsarge, and that is, a massive chunk of very vulnerable superstructure for it, but it's just so funny to watch that happen. And the torpedo bombers, they're a bit more balanced. The torpedoes have a very tight spread, and it's preferable to attack the enemy ships from the bow to stern on, because even if they go bow into it, they're probably eating a torpedo or two. And if they do manage to eat all the torpedoes, you're doing like 25k to them with these things torpedoes. And the planes seem to not really run out that much. Again, with me playing too, the regenerate's more than decent enough to keep up with what you need to do. I've only ran out of planes in a Nakhimov one time, and I've got quite a few battles in this thing. And again, that's with me playing, a terrible CV player. So yeah, this thing is just outright busted. I don't know how you go about balancing it. Maybe remove another plane here or there on it. But yeah, this thing's crazy. And when this thing gets into a good position, like close to the enemy team, because it has the rocket assisted takeoff, the cycle rate on this carrier is insane. It's so easy to just do good, consistent damage over and over and over, and never stopping with the Nakhimov here. And plus, too, you can one-line drop these skip bombs on DDs as well, which is fun because, again, you're doing like 15k to a DD. Not really guaranteed, but once you get good at pulling it off, it's super easy to murder DDs in the Nakhimov. So, yeah. Alright, down to number 1. What could possibly be worse than the Nakhimov? I don't think I needed to introduce or explain why, but any submarine right now is by far the most hated ship in the match, in the game. CV players are so glad submarines are a thing now, so someone else can get their karma bombed at the start of the match. Yes, submarines. Any of them. It doesn't matter which one. Probably like 80% of the players on the enemy team despise their existence. So, submarines. Actually, on a per submarine basis, I don't think the submarines, they themselves, are overpowered. So, yeah, but they are annoying to deal with. They are probably the most annoying class in this game to try and deal with. Why? Well, because this is generally how submarines go. It's one of two ways. It's just like CVs before the CV rework. You've got the submarine player that sleeps with his torpedo plushie, that spends all day watching the director's cut of Das Boot and Hunt for Red October, and they probably are playing like Wolfpack or something on their computer as they're watching the game going on in front of them, and they are like the best submarine captains you're ever going to meet. You never see them. They're nuking your battleships in the back for like 20 or 30k every salvo, and your CV died 10 minutes ago. You didn't even realize, because that's how good these guys are. Then you've got the guys that pop in the submarines, sail straight into the cap, get depth charged by 15 planes, and then say some very choice words in chat, and then leave. That's how submarines are right now, and there's not a lot in between from my experience. So, they either don't bother you at all, or they are the bane of your existence the entire match. You have to drop everything that you're doing to deal with a good submarine player, because the torpedoes are homing, and if they hit, again, they're doing like 20, 15k to 25k, depending upon, again, how good or how bad your torpedo protection is, and again, where they hit your ship and how saturated it is and all that jazz. And in return, you have to try and guess where the submarine's at. You have to, if you're lucky enough to have the ASW planes, guesstimate where they're at. Hopefully lead them with enough time for the depth charge to sink down and explode, so forth and so on. And it nets you, like, maybe, if you actually sink the submarine, maybe 15k damage, when they've already, again, cleaved like 30k off of you, probably more if you're in a battleship or something that's not that maneuverable. So for the time and for what you have to do in order to address the threat, you don't get a lot of damage in return. Now, in the grand scheme of the game, that damage number doesn't really count, because the way that you're rewarded in this game, it's not the total amount of damage you've done, but rather the ratio to the ship's HP. Completely nuking a submarine and removing it from the match, you will get the same rewards as if you had completely farmed a GK down. It's the same thing in the way that the game calculates it, but to the player, that's frustrating, because, you know, they see only 15k damage done for having to, you know, stop what they're doing for several minutes to try and address the submarine. And that's if they manage to kill it. In a lot of cases, too, submarines are, well, submarines, they can dive down and run away, and then you don't really know where they're at. And they remove the hydrophone consumable from everybody, unfortunately. And again, they've done some things to kind of bring it back more in balance to make it easier to find the submarines, like replacing the sonar pings, the visual effect, but we can see where they're coming from, along with the indicator when the submarine does ping, so you kind of get a general idea of where they're at, and the oil slicks too. But it's still super frustrating to drop what you're doing, stop playing the game, and have to perform ASW duties when you're in something like a battleship. You know, you're in a battleship. I'm going to play with my guns. I'm going to use my guns. I didn't get in my battleship to, you know, run interference against a submarine with planes. Granted, it's better than not being able to do anything like the Dutch cruisers, Wargaming, where their ASW planes at, please, and one or two other ships that just don't have the ability to do anything to submarines. So they're exceptionally annoying to deal with, but again, on an individual ship basis, I don't think they're that overpowered. It's just like the annoying mosquito that keeps poking at you and annoying you over and over and over again, and sometimes it hits your artery and you bleed out. That's kind of how it is right now. Super annoying to deal with, and they're coming out in full release in apparently late October, early November, according to Wargaming via the Waterline article and video that was released last week. So yeah, we'll get to see more of these guys in game. We'll see how that goes. So guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hope you have a wonderful Monday. Just a fun top 5 video for today's video. Again, let me know what you guys think should have been on this list, what ships should have been on this list. Let me know all that in the comments down below. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. When we hit 40,000 subscribers, when we hit 40k, we're going to do another giveaway, so make sure you stick around for that. Again, hope you guys are having a wonderful Monday. Have a wonderful week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.